Disagree with that statement. Some Star Wars products are starting a bit bland and samey and Filoni. Andor is the freshest perspective of Star Wars, not made by a diehard Star Wars fan. He did the movie as a favor of George. Oh, and then he saw how much people loved it. I felt he owed it to the fans to at least do a few small ghost parts. I felt the Bad Batch didn't do anything to make it worth a whole new franchise in Star Wars, and Boba Fett dropped quality real fast for me, real fast. Here, I'll ditch this. So Boba Fett, I just didn't like the direction that the story went. I think that there was a better way to do that story. I didn't think it was awful. It was weird that they sort of jammed in Mandalorian 2.5 into that show, but I didn't care because Mandalorian 2.5 was some of the best Star Wars we've ever seen ever, in my opinion. Bad Batch, Bad Batch, I'll admit, was super strange. Like, leading up to Bad Batch, I thought it was very, very weird. But I think what's important is, what I think is happening with Star Wars a lot is there are a lot of things going on. There are a lot of properties, but they are, especially the stuff that is rooted older. They're telling a lot of interesting stories and interesting story perspectives that we may not have even thought to want. You know, when you look at Bad Batch, you think, all right, well, who the hell are these guys that they're getting their show? That was what I thought. Was like, who are these characters that we're just like, all right, like, I know them. I knew them from Clone Wars, but they're getting their own show. But what we're getting is the story of the clones. We're getting the story of the clone army and what happened to the clones after Order 66, and we're getting a side of story that we never even thought to ask, and these are questions that were raised at some point. When you started seeing things like Rebels, where we were already past clone troopers, and it was like, well, what happened to the clone troopers? So we're getting the story that we didn't know that we wanted, and you may not want. Like, if you're at a point in Star Wars where you don't care what happened to the clones, don't watch Bad Batch. Like, it really is that simple. Like, that's what it's for. If you didn't care about Boba Fett, if you weren't a big fan, and I think that's what hurts Boba Fett, is that if you were not a big fan of Boba Fett in particular, you really don't care what's happening in that show. None of that affects you in any way whatsoever if you don't know. The problem with Boba Fett was episodes 5 and 6, which were the Mandalorian 2.5, which were unbelievable. If you have not watched Boba Fett, I would urge you to, if you want to just skip the rest of the show, go ahead. Watch episodes 5 and 6. They have nothing to do with the rest of the Boba Fett show. They are relatively standalone. They're Mandalorian episodes. Trust me, they're incredible. Obi-Wan is another show that I don't necessarily think I cared about the story. There was nothing happening in Obi-Wan that I needed to know. I just wanted to know. I like seeing the Inquisitors. I like seeing more stuff about Vader. But there's no... If that never happened, right? If we just assumed, all right, Obi-Wan lived on Tatooine and nothing happened. Vader and the Inquisitors never went to Tatooine and nothing happened. Like, if we just assume that nothing happened, nothing really changes. I appreciate getting a cool story. I love Star Wars, so I like getting cool stories about Star Wars. But if I don't get that story, it's irrelevant to me. I don't mind it. So I think that that's really what's going on, is that you're getting a lot of Star Wars content, but a lot of the content is trying to tell you interesting sides of these stories. The important thing to understand, and I think that a good Star Wars fan will explain this to a new or not necessarily as dedicated Star Wars fan. I think that the important thing for them to explain is you don't need to watch all of this stuff. You don't. That's what's important about Star Wars, is that the interconnectivity is there because it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch this show and hear a reference to something else. It's interesting to see this character cross over from this one project into another project, and you get this more, you get a fuller idea of the life of that character. But if you don't want to watch it, you don't have to watch it. MCU is a little bit different, where if you miss something, you might miss something important. But Star Wars doesn't really tend to be that way. So for anybody that would say like, oh, there's just so much of it, you know, this is why we always say, watch OG trilogy, watch the OT. If you want to watch more, I recommend the prequels, or you can go up to The Mandalorian. And then beyond that, decide what you want to learn more about. But you don't have to watch all of it. You definitely don't. Yeah, some of the decisions the characters make in Obi-Wan are cartoonily baffling. Boba Fett was set up pretty well in Mandalorian Season 2. So in light of that, Boba Fett was very disappointing. Hold on. Let me go back up here. One complaint that really annoys me, it was used in Obi-Wan and again in Andor. It's the character with little screen time and character building getting killed off. People then complain because why should I care? And forgot not everything is for the audience. Those character deaths were for the characters. Oh yeah. Like, do you want a big overarching story, or do you want just smaller characters, like smaller story? Like, I don't know what you want. Metro creator hated working on Mario when he did Mario Land. He then created a parody of Mario and made his own franchise. Boba Fett had it in mind, but I stand by my original statement. Season 1 should have been the whole season, the whole past. Season 2, the present, and flesh out. But that, Lilac, we are in 1,000% agreement on that. The entire first season should have been what happened before. You could have, honestly, Lilac, you could have done it as the Boba Fett movie, and then had it like that, so you had it scaled down a little bit, and then Boba Fett, the show, Season 1, is the current stuff. You could have done it like that. Hold on, I have to use the restroom. I will be right back. They're the Space A-Team. That's kind of my approach to comic book. Yeah, Stone, that's kind of how I am with comics and stuff. Especially like people have asked me, you know, we talk about Star Wars all the time here, and people have asked me like, have I read the Star Wars comics? Like, no, not really. I don't really touch comics at all, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything. If I find out that there are cool comic stories out there about specific things, I may try and track them down, but I'm not going to sit there and like, it's Star Wars, so I have to read the comics. Like, I don't have to engage with every aspect of it. So I treat some of it as side stories that I'll get into later if I care about specific aspects of it. Hold on, let me go back up here. Hold on. Both at one in my. Oh no. The fact that Ahsoka needs to be in every show a Filoni makes is getting old for me. I don't mind that because I'm glad that she's getting her own show now. I like that. I like the idea that Ahsoka was always working behind the scenes. As long as she doesn't feel wedged in there. But so far, I feel like she's been sort of necessary. I think that it's important, for her to be there. I think, whenever we finally get the death of Ahsoka, I think that that's going to be pretty, I think that people are going to be upset about that one. I really do think people are not going to like that. Yeah, I like Ahsoka Sadama. Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't want Ahsoka to feel like she's forced into something, but I like seeing her. And it makes sense that she would still be there. Ahsoka was basically booted out of the Jedi Order, but she was never a bad person. So, she was Fulcrum for a while. She may have even started the Fulcrum position. She still helped with Mando and Grogu. So she still wants to help. She's still trying to help. Later, Kia. You probably left already, but later, Kia. Have a good one. They could have done another season of Clone Wars to show the events of the Bad Batch. No. I disagree with. Clone Wars was the Clone Wars. When Order 66 happened and the Republic or the Empire took over, that is the end of the Clone Wars. If you do another season after that and you call it the Clone Wars, that's not the same thing. That's incorrect. And I'd be one of the first people to say, why is this show called the Clone Wars? This is not the Clone Wars. That would be like saying Rebels was the Clone Wars. This is not it's the Clone Wars was a specifically named thing, and so no, I actually would disagree with that. Boba Fett now following the Bad Batch was kind of interesting. They could have followed anything else, but they did it with the Bad Batch, and it worked. I think that they created an interesting story with that. I like the Bad Batch. To be perfectly clear, I actually very, very much like the Bad Batch show. I'm very excited for the next season, and I like the characters. I think that they're good, and I'm curious to see where they take Omega through the series, because Omega is my understanding is that Omega, or my expectation is that Omega is basically the perfect clone. She is a clone that is going to be compiled of all of the things that they did to make these clones special. She's going to be super tracker. She's going to be super smart, a good shot. And I do think that she's going to develop physically as far as strength goes. I think that she's going to be the compilation of these other characters. They should first Empire. Wait, they should the first Empire Day. Show the first Empire Day. So season 1 showed at least a year after. Season 2 longer. Can't remember. We need a backstory as to why they call him Darth. Why he called him Darth. Did the Bad Batch show take place over a year? It didn't feel like it was that long. I don't think it was that long. It's where to really start moving to a different time period, like Old Republic era stories. I mean, that's what Mando's doing. Mandalorian is further into the future. Mando started 6 years. I think it was 6 years after Return of the Jedi. So that's a good time period. There's a lot of story that's going to need to be filled in there before we get to Episode 7. Old Republic would be nice. We are getting High Republic. We're getting High Republic like Season 2 or something, right? Or like a second run or something. Considering that we're getting an Ahsoka show, we're getting more interconnected stuff because you have to watch Rebels to understand why Ahsoka is in The Mandalorian. No, I don't think you'd necessarily have to watch. Put it this way, you didn't have to watch Rebels to understand Ahsoka being there on the planet that she was on in The Mandalorian. I think the only problem with Ahsoka is you have to watch Clone Wars to know who Ahsoka is, or to have the impact of who Ahsoka is. I don't think you need to, like, my sister loved The Mandalorian. Like, she's a moderate Star Wars fan at best, and she loved The Mandalorian, and she likes Ahsoka. She loves that character. I explained to her who Ahsoka was from Clone Wars because she didn't watch Clone Wars. But I didn't tell her really anything about Rebels. So I don't think you necessarily need to watch Rebels. I do think that you need to watch, if you want to have the impact of Ahsoka, I do think you need to watch Clone Wars. Because after Clone Wars, you could just say nothing happened. That's another Obi-Wan problem. If you just say nothing happened, then all right, nothing happened, and you know, boom, she's on Mandalorian. Yeah, it's heavily. Leia was. You have the issue of Luke, Leia, and Han. Leia, especially, was heavily involved in for years in the New Republic and its rebuilding and politics. Mando touches on some parts of the New Republic, but mostly we see the remnants of the Empire. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Is that we've got a lot of story going on between. During the Mandalorian times, between Jedi and Force Awakens, there's a good chunk of time there, so there's a lot of stories to tell there. So I think that's the next. If we're gonna move into the next time period, I think that's what Mandalorian needs to be setting up. But Mandalorian isn't gonna set that up. I think that you're gonna get more of that setup out of something like Ahsoka. I think that's probably gonna be a better connection to Leia and to the New Republic or whatever it's called. Ahsoka felt a bit wedged in Mando. That I can agree with. I can agree with that. I can agree that she came out of nowhere. I liked having her there, but I can agree that she did sort of come out of nowhere. I mean, she was in what, 2 episodes? So I'll agree to that. I can agree that she was kind of shoehorned in at that specific spot. But I do think they did a good job of working it that way. The fact that Mando met Bo-Katan and Bo-Katan had a good relationship with Ahsoka, and you know, that flowed very good from one into the other. Let me queue up a match here. That flowed very well from one into the other. Mando, you know, obviously has good reason to meet Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan, you know, getting involved with the Jedi isn't something that Bo-Katan is familiar with or very interested in doing. So she would, you know, she would pass him off to Ahsoka, who she obviously had a good relationship with. Like from our perspective of knowing the story, that was a good transition. But I will also agree that the show loses nothing without that transition, other than he has to figure out some other way to help Grogu. I don't watch Clone Wars. She doesn't know who Ahsoka is, but now she wants to rewatch those movies so she can see how all the and that's the danger. That's the trick. Go ahead, Latimer. That's the trick about Star Wars, is that the deeper you get, the more you, if you enjoy it, as long as you follow a good path, as you enjoy it, you do want to know more. Oh my god, this friggin' rotating platform thingy. Dude, does anybody have the thingy? What's happening here? There we go. Wait, where is it? I'm not paying attention the way I should be. Ah! Oh, Omega was the perfect clone of Jango. No, okay, so the thing about Omega, they haven't actually confirmed this. This is basically just my theory, but it is a theory that they're sort of working towards. So the thing about Omega, I'm sorry to this team because I'm not really paying attention the way I should be. Hold on. Okay. So, okay. Okay. The thing with Omega is that they. So the Bad Batch, I don't know if you're familiar with it. So the Bad Batch, the setup is that they are modified clones that they kind of changed this. I think they kind of retconned this, to be completely honest with you. My understanding originally was that they were accidents. They were defective clones, but they had good traits. So they instead of just keeping them at the base and just teaching them how to clean and stuff, they made them soldiers, and they used their modifications. They used their mutations, I should say, to their advantage. They said in the Bad Batch that they were modified that way, that they were made to be that specific way, like Wrecker's strength and Hunter's tracking ability and what is it? You know what I mean? They made them that way. They reference Boba Fett, an unmodified clone. He was a clone that was not given any sort of enhancements, and he was not age accelerated. My understanding is that he was not age accelerated. Oh my God, there's a guy right there. They called him Alpha, which is like the first one. Hold on. Let's go. Ah, come on. I had that open. Hold on. All right. So they called him Alpha. So then, years and years later, you get the Bad Batch, which are intentionally modified clones to breed. Oh no! Oh, watch my back. I need help! I need help! Wait! Oh wait, I can go this way. No! No! I need help. So, oh wait. Oh no, that was the best chance. So, her name is Omega. Early on, she has exhibited signs that she is capable of doing a lot of the things that they're doing. She's exhibited signs that she's a really good shot, which is like Crosshair. She's made some really smart moves. She's done some tracking. So, yeah, I thought originally the Bad Batch were defective clones. They seem to have retconned that in the show. They're implying in the show that it was done intentionally. Hold on. Go up this way. No, he was right behind me. So that's the implication now. The expectation, in my opinion, is that she is going to be a clone where whatever process they use to give Wrecker his strength and Tech his intelligence and all, they did all of it to her. So I believe that she is going to be the Omega clone, the perfect clone. She is going to have a suite of incredibly enhanced abilities. This was probably what they were going to offer the Emperor to maintain their position as cloners. Because this was the whole thing. And if you watch Bad Batch, this was the whole thing about Bad Batch. Was that they were worried that conscripted soldiers, which are hired and or forced soldiers, that they're going to be easier to find and staff, and it's not going to be worth it for the Empire, because now the Empire is not fighting a war. Now they are staffing an occupation. They're not fighting a war. So they were worried that was going to happen. So I believe that Omega was a plan for them to create a significantly stronger, better soldier, and then this is what they would sell to the Empire so that they could keep their position. But it didn't happen fast enough, and the Empire ditched the clones anyway, but we don't know how. So that's what the Bad Batch show is showing us. But that's what I think Omega is, and there's actually questions about whether or not she's going to be Force sensitive. Because Shaak Ti, she was the Jedi that was there at the base. she was killed. So they're wondering if they're going to have used her DNA and they're also going to make her Force. I don't want her to be Force sensitive, but that's the possibility that's going on. So that's a good character. I'm really interested to see. But if you don't care about them, you don't have to watch it. It's totally irrelevant to the main Skywalker saga. I'm sorry, I kind of rambled there for a second. Which I always do, and I always apologize for it. It was a fear thing. Remember, Order 65 was for the clones to shut down and arrest all the Senate as a hidden code to make people ignore Order 66. But Palpatine said it's easier to rule with fear than money, and clones cost more. Yeah, and he actually says it in the Clone Wars. What's the guy's name? The leader of the Kaminoans. I forgot his name. But he actually says, you know, we have empowered the Empire to our own detriment. And that was a concern. That was something that they were kind of worried about. And it happened faster than they were expecting. So I believe that that's what Omega was. Omega was going to be the plan. She was going to be the thing that they offer to the Empire to say, this is what we can make now. These are much better. They're much stronger. But they were much more expensive, and you're not fighting a war. You know, there's no rebellion. Remember, at this point, there's no rebellion. The rebellion started as terrorist cells. They were called terrorist cells for years, until eventually 5 years BBY. That's when they were organized into the actual rebellion. God, we're nerds, man. But yeah, but that going back to the original point. That's what's good about a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of Star Wars content coming out right now, but it should be clear, and it should be made clear. It should be made clear to people that these things are not necessary. They're not. If you don't watch Boba Fett, you're not missing anything. If you don't care about Boba Fett, you don't have to watch it. There's nothing there that's important. What I say is, again, if you care about Mandalorian and you don't care about Boba Fett, you need to sit down and you need... This is what my sister... I'm like bashing my sister in the head over this, and I keep telling her, because she didn't like Boba Fett. She watched like 2 episodes and she was like, I'm just not in it. And I keep telling her, but she liked Mandalorian. And I'm like, you need to sit down and you need to watch these 2 episodes. They have nothing to do with Boba Fett. You don't see Boba Fett. You're not on Tatooine. You don't interact with that at all. Episodes 5 and 6 have nothing to do with Boba Fett. So if you don't care about that show, but you liked Mandalorian, just watch those 2 episodes. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. You may need to watch the 3rd episode, the 7th episode, which is the last episode of the season, just to get a little bit of resolution about one aspect of it. But really, you could just go online and you can watch the scene and you're done. At the start of the Clone Wars, the galactic credit was one credit to $1.44. So we have a cost idea of how much stuff costs. That's kind of interesting. I guess it's just science stuff that she's a clone of Jango. No. Latimer, by clone, it's not a hybrid. Not like we took a male egg and or we took a male sperm and a female egg, and no. Clones are literally just clones. They are taken from the genetic material of somebody, and then they are exact replicas of that person. But clones are like clones, as in the clone army. They are age accelerated, and then they are trained to be soldiers. But you have some of them that come out defective. So when Jango, and we talked about this before, Lilac, I think we disagreed on something, but I think that their proof is that it's not that way. So the clone army started 10 years before episode 2. We found out that Sifo Dyas spoke to, he was the one working with the Kaminoans, and that was when they found Jango Fett, who was the clone donor, and that was when they developed the beginnings of the clone army. Jango Fett's one of his first requests was an unmodified clone in any way whatsoever. So they created a clone of which is basically his child, and that child was not given any age acceleration. That's why 10 years later in episode 2, Boba Fett is 10 years old. He was not age accelerated at all. He was grown and he was raised like a child. That's why he's Jango Fett's son, but really he's his genetic clone. But that's why he's Alpha, because he was the first clone. Omega, it makes sense, is the last clone. That's the final clone. So you've got the Alpha and the Omega. But she is exhibiting signs that she is a super clone, basically. She's the first and probably and the only super clone. So in episode 1, the hyperdrive costs 100,000 Pegats, roughly 4,000 Republic credits, so roughly 5,764 hyperdrive. Not bad in a hyperspace faring society. That's kind of normal, right? It's the equivalent of a better engine in a car. But does that bring that does bring up a minor issue that I have with Star Wars shows. They occasionally do have issues on watch order relevance. Clone Wars is a great example in this. But as you said, Boba has episodes that literally are there to tell a separate story. Yeah, I don't agree with them doing that. I don't agree with them putting those Mandalorian episodes in the smack dab in the middle of Boba Fett. I highly disagree with their decision to do that. I think that should have come out as a special, as a special 2-part episode or something. And I think that it should have stayed that way. I came back to hear about eggs and sperm. Very interesting. Yeah, we, Amy, I don't know if you're normally here. This is just what we do. We spin off on topics all the time. Yeah, at the end of the day, Book of Boba Fett is a show about gangsters. It really kind of is. It's like space gangsters. But episodes 5 and 6 are so good. I don't get how a clone of male comes out to a female with Omega. That's obviously something that we'll need to figure out. You know, the question there has been, or the question I would ask is, as a very unique clone with multiple genetic augmentations, you know, down right to the DNA level. Would they have had to add... This is actually something that could be very interesting. In order for a sustainable clone of Omega's build, of Omega's creation, it may not have been possible to create a standalone clone. They may have had to merge her DNA with someone else's DNA. They may have had, in order to make a more stable, like the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. They say that in order to sort of fill in the blanks, they had to splice in like frog DNA or something. They may have had to do that to create Omega. That might be what they used Shaak Ti's blood for, which could be why Omega turns out to be Force sensitive. That's a storyline that they could go with, theoretically. They did the same to Wolverine. You see, they do that for people like your sister. She may not want to watch Boba Fett, but she'll watch it if it has this. She'll watch the stuff she does like pop up. She'll watch it if it has stuff she does like pop up. I have argued. People complain about a Book of Boba. Barely had Boba, and when he was there, he did nothing. Now tell me, what did Boba do in the OT to make him so popular? Yeah, I never really understood that. Like, Boba Fett's not in the Book of Boba Fett show. I never really understood that argument. My problem was just that it felt irrelevant. Like, for a lot of people, it felt irrelevant. Again, I like the character, so I don't really care. That sounds like a regular baby. Somber, maybe. That might be close to it. That might be what it kind of sounds like. You know, without the love making, right? He had cool armor. My limited knowledge of genetics. The only thing separating males and females is one chromosome. Yeah, but remember, you're not. But Dragon, you're not doing male and female here. You're doing a completely standalone clone of multiple alterations. So in order to stabilize the being, maybe there were other versions that didn't work, but in order to make a stable cell, maybe that's what you needed to do. I'm just saying, it could be an interesting. That could be the Star Wars science-y answer for what happens. Yeah, cool looking stoic silent dudes, they're always popular. Not even at the time. I think that they're always popular. Listen, you got a superhero team or a supervillain team, and everybody's talking and they're doing stuff, and there's one guy in the background, right? The team moves out. That's the guy you want to know about. That's the guy. You're like, who's that guy? Well, right? What? That guy was so badass. He didn't even say anything. Sorry, such a closed-minded thought brought us to this. No, that's not closed-minded. I don't know what you thought was closed-minded about it. Yeah, just having a mask makes them mysterious. But if you're making a clone, you can just change that chromosome. Maybe that wasn't. Maybe that was beyond. Remember, this was nothing like they'd ever created before. They'd been creating individual clones, which they even said in Bad Batch that they were out of genetic material. They had lost the original donor, Jango Fett. So without that, they were not able to create clones of the same quality. So they were running out of the ability to create strong clones. Thank you, KH Black Noir from The Boys. Yeah, it's just cool, man. It's just cool. They just stand there and you don't know. And you don't know. Are they super dangerous? Like, what's their deal? Why are they there? But yeah, that was a big thing with Jango Fett died and they needed to find a new genetic donor. But I think that's what Lama Su was working on, was creating a different kind of clone that is made up of other clones, but maybe it didn't work properly. Remember, she was the first one. You know, I doubt when the Kaminoans made their very first clone, they knocked it out of the park. Alrighty. Give me a second here. Multiplayer maps changed. My apologies to that team. I was not paying attention nearly as much as I should have been. I'll probably just send you there. That's all. That's who I have on my list. Because my list. They lost Jango. Oh, if only there were another source. Glares at Boba. Boba, no, because Boba is a clone. That's why Boba's not going to work, because Boba is a clone. You needed an original person. You needed an actual person. So Boba wouldn't have worked, because I think that was something that they had said. I know that they said that somewhere, that when they tried to make clones of clones, they came up with like imperfect clones. They came up with clones that had a lot of defects or were just not that good. They needed an original donor, and then they would get regular blood from Jango. So it wasn't even like they got blood from Jango and then that was all they ever needed. They had to keep getting blood from him. My guess is they were making a clone from each of his cells. That would be my guess, is that they would find like viable cells and they were making clones out of each of them. Yeah, Boba was a completely unaltered clone to Hubie, the best thing after the original. No, but Somber, the best thing after the original would just be to find a new original. It would be, I mean, and if they wanted to stay in-house, they could have just found another Mandalorian. So yeah, I think that that was probably a good choice for them, was to not just go with clones of clones, but they should have just. That was the big problem, was that they went a long time and didn't find another donor. That was the problem, I think. I enjoyed it, but I hated the setup. The Rancor was a good payoff. Black Chrysanthemum, who should have also appeared in Obi-Wan in the comics that they pulled him from. He was a bounty hunter who got into a fight with Obi-Wan on Tatooine while in exile, and Obi-Wan had to use his lightsaber, giving him the scar. The scar was in Book of Boba Fett. There were those two huts that went nowhere. Max Bloody Rebo, first they kept escaping death. Please upload the Star Wars segment to YouTube. This discussion was perfect. That's the same reasoning why X-23 is the way she is. A Wolverine sample got damaged, so they duplicated the X chromosome to make X-23. Also, how accurate to life is it that scientists would get so caught up in their research that they would forget, oh, wait, our genetic material can run out? Yeah, exactly. Like, that happens. I imagine that happens. FBI agent watching. Max was at Jabba's palace and barge, but not present when it went down. Was Max Rebo at the barge, too? I remember I heard the music, but I don't remember seeing him or seeing them. He reappeared in the bar in Boba Fett and wasn't there again when it blew. He was also involved in a few other places that had disasters. Boba was completely unaltered clone. Elon Musk bought Twitter. Oh boy, here we go. Comics go into that issue where clones would have crazy defects or were kind of raging monsters you couldn't control. Jango wasn't a real Mandalorian either. He was a foundling. Yeah, Elon Musk just bought Twitter. All right. He only bought it to avoid trial. Get ready for a bunch of Twitter posts about how great Elon is.